Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Emily. My channel is completely about memory keeping, and today's video is going to be playing with a Gelli Plate. I have been seeing people playing with these all over the internet and I've been so excited to try one out. I bought a humongous Gelli Plate because I wanted to not be limited by size. My album is a 9x12 album right now, and I wanted to be able to do a full page of Gelli Plate. I'll tell you, this thing feels huge. I'm gonna play with it thought it would be really fun to just sort of play with this and talk you guys through my process and sort of what if there's anything that I learned and that I can share. So I am just opening this for the very first time, and I can already tell it's never going to be this clean again. They are obviously washable, but I just feel like it's not going to be that perfectly clean. This is the roller that it doesn't come with it, but it's like recommended to spread the paint around. The idea is you move the paint around it and make some cool designs and impressions. I forgot to get acrylic paint though, so I'm just going to use what I have, which is white gesso and watercolor paint. I don't know how it's going to work, and it might not work at all. It also feels like kind of a waste because watercolor paints are super expensive, but you know what? I want to play with this and I don't care. So I'm using kind of just like a piece of, I wouldn't call it scratch paper. It's like 60-pound cardstock. It's pretty thin cardstock. It's what comes in my pre-made bound books that I buy from Etsy, and I'll put a link to the store that I use, but I have to rip out a number of pages just to make it fit to make my book work. And so I end up with kind of a lot of like torn out pages that I just sort of use as scratch paper or stamping impressions, that kind of thing. So I'm just kind of going to start out with a little bit of paint because I don't want to waste it, and I don't know how this is going to go. So my idea is to have, to make this full page of Gelli Plate impression, but then to cut out some shapes and make a layout that's not, I don't want it to look too like art journal-y. And so just kind of like moving the paint around. One thing I'm already noticing is that the watercolor paint is kind of like, it doesn't spread super thinly. And also I got a hair on it. That's a cat hair. So I'm going to try mixing in a little bit of white acrylic paint, and maybe that will give it like the texture that I want, which is a little bit more of a smooth impression. Although I think these dots, or like sort of the globs of paint, might look cool. I don't know. I'm a total noob at this, but I kind of like how that white and orange are mixing. But I want a little bit more of the yellow, so we'll just try to kind of see how that works. One thing that I am starting to see too with this watercolor paint is that it kind of beads a little bit, so I definitely am going to get acrylic paint. I think it'll probably, like you can see, it's kind of starting to pull away from the Gelli Plate, which actually I think is going to make a cool impression. I don't think there's anything like wrong with doing it like that, but it's just something I'm noticing that I definitely want to get acrylic paint for, so I will do that, but I'm not going to let that slow me down. So I'm super excited to see how this turns out. I want to kind of press it down really firmly to make sure it soaks up as much of the paint as possible. And voila! I really like that. It's a lot actually of a darker orange than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would kind of lighten up, and I thought you'd see more of the yellow. But there's still a little bit of paint on there, and so I want to try to see if maybe I can do another round with this and see if it'll bring out the yellow. It's also funny how when you kind of spread it super thin, the color changes quite a bit. It looks like much more of a bright yellow. So I'm going to speed this up because I am going to kind of just keep playing around with it and see how it turns out. So I loved how it turned out after the second round with the white and yellow. I really did like how the beading made it look. I just wanted to soak up the rest of the paint just so as not to waste any, but a lot of the paint had already dried by that point, so it didn't really work. So at this point, it's really when my idea for the layout came to life. My idea is to cut some partial circles that sort of run off the edge of the page, and using my story kit for the story of care. I'm going to document how my husband and I got sick. We got really sick. It wasn't COVID, but just sort of telling the story of what it was like to be sick in a pandemic, and how we were taking care of ourselves and our communities, making sure that everybody was safe, and just how different it is to have just a common cold than it used to be. So just was a story that I wanted to make sure to document, and the care story kit was so perfect for that. And so that's essentially what my journaling is about. And plus the fact that we just have not even been sick at all since 2019, which that alone was weird. And then just like reminiscing, like I used to go out in public when I had a cold, and now I just can't even imagine doing that. So I cut out, or I made these sort of partial shapes in Photoshop, and then used them to print out my journaling and also use them sort of as like a stencil. And at this point, I wasn't sure which ones I wanted to use. I liked each of those partial circles for their own reasons. And so I just wanted to get out my book. So this is how I typically create layouts, is like directly in the book on the, the last blank page. This one actually has a layout on the other side of it, but so that kind of is creating a little bit of challenge, but it's fine. So I wanted to just sort of see, okay, which ones are going to work and which ones do I like the best? Which side do I want to put my journaling on, because I can always reprint it, and which side do I want to put a photo on? And I liked these two the best. Actually, to be honest, I liked this lighter colored one, but it wasn't gonna work. So I ran this through my printer, and this is the digital part of the story kit. If I could do it over, I would have not done that. I would have used the vellum Take Good Care heart, because I think that would have looked better. But I thought it would look kind of like a cool screen printed shape on the Gelli Plate painted page. It's fine. It's not a big deal, but that's one thing that I didn't like as much as I thought I would. I wish I had used the physical product. I do have both. So then it was just a matter of adhering it down, and rolling adhesive was not enough because the page is a little bit warpy because it was so soaked in paint. And so this was definitely a job for Yes Paste, which is just like a very hardy scrapbooking glue that you kind of have to spread with your fingers. And then so that's the vellum heart that I was like, oh man, I really wish I would have done that, but oh well. It definitely was not enough to like redo all of it. So one thing I love about the story kits this year is the flat word, because I do work in a book. It's so nice to have a flat embellishment like that, and Allie's handwriting is just my favorite thing ever. So I'm just putting rolling adhesive on the white part of that. If I had thought about this ahead of time, I could have stapled it onto the Gelli Plate like partial circle, but I didn't think about that until a little bit later. And then I wanted to do some writing on the Gelli Plate because I love the contrast of this texture and then the bold, dark, black brush tip pen writing. So I'm just writing taking care over and over along the edge, partially because I love how that looks, and also because when I printed it out, I forgot to hide the outline of the shape, and so it printed this sort of line along the edge of the circle. It's not a big deal, but I wanted to hide it by writing. And then writing taking above the embellishment care, just to sort of match the brush pen. So this is actually the next day, flash forward, I was out of printer paper, so I had to run to the store. This is a picture of us being sick, and I used a clipping mask to make it that same shape of the quarter circle. So the last thing I wanted to do is to mark an X in the middle of the page, just to sort of draw the eye towards. So I'm using a dark gray Stabilo pen 68. It's just like a thick marker that doesn't bleed as much to the other side. I mean, if you go over it a bunch, it will, but my idea was to try to keep it from bleeding to the other side. So that is pretty much it. After I had the X made, which fortunately I didn't screw up, that was pretty much it. And so it's a little bit of a messy, sort of an art journaly vibe to it, but I really liked how it turned out, and it was so fun using the Gelli Plate. I'm really excited about all the possibilities that this tool can have. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, leave me a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.